Cool.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for yet another LIDNUG and Wintellect session. Before I hand over to John Robbins, I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping slides first. Anyways, today, for those that aren't entirely sure, we have John Robbins from Wintellect. He's going to go through IntelliTrace. And the title of today's event session is The Key to Better Day-to-Day Debugging. Before we head any further in, I want to just thank our sponsors, both Orktrip, Telerik, and Pluralsight, who are our primary sponsors, for their continued support, and also Syncfusion for all the assistance they do in spreading the word and supporting our community. If you have any questions to anybody from LIDNUG, feel free to email us at info@lidnug.org. You can always catch us on Twitter at twitter.com/LIDNUG, and on Facebook, facebook.com/LIDNUG. And all our recordings gets uploaded to youtube.com/LIDNUG, which is our channel on YouTube. And our website is bit.ly/LIDNUG. May we have an upcoming event scheduled currently in May that has been published, so you can sign up for that one as well. It's another LIDNUG and Wintellect collaboration, and this time it's Jeffrey Richter performing asynchronous IO-bound operations. And this is about the newer features, await and async, in ASP.NET. Also, you can always check out all of our upcoming events by going to lidnugevents.eventbrite.com. John Robbins, I thought about changing his title to consultant and trainer, but really he is a software developer at heart. This is, I believe, his third LIDNUG event. John is also a co-founder of Wintellect, and Wintellect does a lot of training and consulting, and you can go to www.wintellect.com and read more about them. Also, he has a blog. It's bit.ly/jrobbins. And you can catch him on Twitter on John Wintellect. As I said, he's a trainer, and he's a many times over author as well of quite a number of, in my opinion, very heavy and serious books on debugging and other .NET goodness. Anyways, thank you very much for showing up, everybody, and thank you, John, for coming back to us again. It's truly a pleasure having you on board. I will now hand over to you. The reins are yours, John.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brian and Peter. I always enjoy talking with you guys before. We always have a lot of good laughs, and I always enjoy talking with the LIDNUG group because you guys always bring in a lot of good questions, and I learn a lot from a lot of the questions that you guys are doing. So let me start sharing my screen because we're going to do all the demos and everything. So we'll get the IntelliTrace slide up. Don't worry, there's only 2 slides that I have to show you. And we're going to talk today about IntelliTrace, which is the key to debugging. So as Brian mentioned, I'm from Wintellect, and most people know us as a training company because you've heard of Jeffrey Richter, Jeff Prostice, or a little bit of myself. But we're actually a huge consulting company. Training is only a tiny piece of our business. And so we found that there's a really neat niche, and so that niche is that we provide senior level developers and architects. We're not a traditional consultancy, and we do a lot of high level projects with a lot of different companies where we provide the leadership to a company that wants to change their culture and change their direction for development. So we do a lot of big projects for a lot of different companies, and we're getting to be pretty good size now. So you can read more about us at wintellect.com. We do have the training component to Wintellect, and that's what most people have heard of, but I'll just sum it up this way. We're the company that trains Microsoft. So for the last 13 years, we're Microsoft's largest training partner. All the developers at Microsoft on all the teams come to Wintellect classes to learn about debugging, Jeffrey Richter's async, Jeff Prostice's HTML, jQuery, all of that stuff. So it's kind of cool because we get to talk to all the developers and testers at Microsoft to do their stuff. That's the end of the slides. Woo! I know you're happy about that. But before we get into things, we're going to talk about IntelliTrace here today. And this is a part of Visual Studio Ultimate. And it is it's going to change your life if you haven't used it a whole lot. Because let's think about where we've been in the debugging world, okay? Think about what you do day-to-day debugging, right? You start Visual Studio, you open up the source file, and you set a breakpoint. Well, you know what's interesting about that? That's exactly what your great-grandparents did. What new technologies have we had debugging-wise? Okay, let's see, we got a question here. Okay, I'll let Brian take that question about the missing the audio.
Yeah,
But okay, thanks. So the debugging technology we use day to day today in 2013 literally has not changed in almost 30 years. Setting a breakpoint on a source line is about it. So we've got kind of a problem. But we actually have two types of debugging that we have to do. You have your day-to-day debugging, and you have production debugging, right? Because everybody's writing web services and web apps and everything else. So this is kind of a problem. So we do have other ways to debug, right? Setting a breakpoint on things is one way to do it, but you have printf-style debugging or tracing. Well, that's normally what you do for production. So you have some trace sources turned on in your application, you do a bunch of tracing, and that works okay for production. It gives you a pretty good idea of where you've been. But have you ever tried to debug your application day-to-day with tracing? Not very conducive. I doubt if anybody's ever tried it because you know it's very painful. So, you know, we do have the modern debugging, what I described a second ago. You can set a breakpoint on a source line and, you know, kind of look at the state of the application, and it's great for day-to-day stuff, so you can see who's doing what to whom. But have you ever tried to debug a production server? So you go to the network operations guy and you say, hey, I've got to install Visual Studio on the production server. And what does the network operations guy do? They look at you and say, get the hell out of my office before I kill you, right? There's no way they're going to let you install Visual Studio on a production box.
Okay, what happened there?
Did you lose me?
Yep, we lost you briefly, but
okay.
You're back now.
Okay. Whew.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah, you're there now, John.
Okay. I'm not touching anything.
No, it appears that when people come in and unmute in the audio, they knock you out for some reason.
Kind of crazy. Okay. Sorry about that. So let's get back to what we were talking about. So we can always go look at mini dumps, right? You can go into Task Manager and you can pick your process and you can go create a dump file of it. You can do this with other tools as well. So that's another way to debug, and that's generally how we debug a lot of production servers today, is that we grab the best we're going to get as a mini dump, maybe using a tool like sysinternals proc dump. So have you ever tried to debug day-to-day with that? Doesn't work very well, does it? So we've got a problem, right? We've got nothing new in the debugging world from our day-to-day debugging, right? We're still setting a breakpoint on a source line, but we have this problem of production as well that is big in modern. So let's step back for a minute and let's daydream. Let's pretend we can wave the magic wand and say, I want to debug the ultimate way. And what would be the ultimate? To me, the ultimate would be to be able to sit down and record everything my application did. All right, wouldn't that be really cool to be able to say, I want to see every memory operation. I want to see every database operation. I want to see every HTTP request. So I can see everything my application did so that I essentially record a video of my application. That would be very, very cool, wouldn't it? Well, what might be the problem with that? Performance might be miserable. So unless you're going to invent a way to get electrons to go faster than the speed of light, the overhead of recording a video of all of the internals of your application is just not feasible. It's just not practical. But that idea of a video of where my application has been could be very, very interesting in the real world. Well, what the folks did at Microsoft is that they sat down and said, well, we can't record everything, but how about we raise it up a level? How about we look at recording events? Key events, like you opened a file, you access this database, an HTTP request came in. So that way we could have a trade-off where we can record the data of what's happening and see how we got to this point currently from the past, but it wouldn't kill performance. That's exactly what IntelliTrace is. It's a way to record where we've been, and so we can see how we got there. So this is a very interesting technology, and something I've learned with IntelliTrace using it is that it's the first thing I look at in the debugger, because I found that I can debug 10 to 20% faster because I see where I've been. So this is a huge boost to productivity, because if you can debug faster, you can deploy faster. Let's go see what the question is. Okay. We'll let Brian take that one from Andy. But you know, the shrinking the debugging time. In fact, let's look at a number here. There's a very important number in the software business, and that's 50%. Okay, 50% of your average team's time is spent debugging. So I'm going to talk about a tool here, IntelliTrace, that can cut 10 to 20% off that time. So this is big. This is huge, because we have a new way of debugging. And this 50% is pretty well known. For any of you that are managers out there, you've probably learned this the hard way, right? You go give an assignment to a developer, and you tell them, hey, go build this piece of the application, add this functionality, and the developer comes back and says, yeah, I can do that in 2 weeks. And what do you write down on the schedule? 4 weeks, right? I just taught you how to be a manager, right? That's all there is to it. So it's kind of a weird thing. So this number, I didn't make this up. This number comes from the best book on software ever written, and it's by Steve McConnell. Oops. And I can't recommend this book enough, okay? Because it is the key to software development. This is the book that teaches you about software construction, and the book that we have, we like everybody to read at Wintellect. I read it last year, and it was still the best book I've ever read, because I know that many of you never took a class in college on debugging. And this is about software construction, the point where you're sticking all the bugs in the code. So this is pretty important that we utilize this. So that's where that number comes from. I didn't make up the 50%, but there you go. In fact, if any of you that are listening to me are seeing that you have college loans that you still have to pay, if you got a computer science degree, they didn't teach you about half your job, so you have my permission to only pay back half the loans that you owe your college, because that's the dirty secret of computer science degrees, is that nobody talks about how to actually solve problems. So it's kind of a hassle. So this is really important. Read this book. You'll become a better developer for it. So what I thought I would do here is I thought I would demonstrate just this IntelliTrace from an interesting way, where you can follow along. You can go grab the same application that I'm working with as well. So the application I'm going to grab is up at CodePlex. Okay, and I thought we'd just go download this and kind of play around with it a little bit. Okay. So what we can do here is, those of you that have done ASP.NET MVC, right, the ASP.NET MVC Music Store application, this is pretty much your standard application that looks for, shows you everything you need to do for ASP.NET MVC development. So it's kind of a good reference app, because it kind of shows you everything that you need to do, from security, accessing a database, Entity Framework, the MVC stuff. So it's a pretty cool application. And let's go take a look at this guy and go have some fun with it. So I downloaded it there, and just to show you that there's nothing up my sleeves, Okay, we'll open it up and go have some fun. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, because I downloaded this from the internet, it's got the streams in it that Internet Explorer and Google put in to indicate that it was downloaded from the internet. So I'm going to remove those streams. Oops. If I knew how to type, I'd be really good. So, okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to run streams -d-s, and this is going to remove all of the Internet Zone identifier stuff. And I'm mainly doing this so Visual Studio won't pop up and say, hey, this is an untrusted project and all of that. And Streams is a program you can get from sysinternals.com. Okay. So Brian will work with the audio problems and try to get you guys going. Okay. So here we've got the system, and we're ready to go. So I've got Visual Studio here, and as I mentioned, this is Visual Studio Ultimate. And let's go look at our project, okay? And this will convert the project because it's for a prior version of Visual Studio, and it upgraded everything, looks pretty good. But let's go do this right. So I've got the music store here. I could compile this and run it, but I want a 10% performance boost in my application. And so how I'm going to get my 10% performance boost is actually pretty simple. I'm going to go into the properties for the project, and here's a guaranteed 10% performance boost for a lot of you out there, and that's to move to .NET 4.5. Okay? So why do you get this guaranteed, this easy 10% performance boost? Well, the reason is that .NET 4.5 drastically improved reflection in particular. So you'll notice very quickly that anything that relies on reflection, which turns out to be much more than you expect, is instantly faster. So, I wanted to move over to 4.5 just to get a for-free boost. So let's go ahead and build this, and we'll make sure that there's no build errors, but, obviously we have a few where we've got an ambiguous reference with our compare attribute. So let's open this up. And there's the compare attribute, and I'm just going to fix this with ReSharper just to make my life easy. So we want to use the component model version instead of the new ASP.NET Web MVC version. So we fix that one, and let's go get the next one. Okay. So there we fixed our attributes. So we'll see if this builds now. Excellent. I'm ready to test. So all we have to do here is start running the debugger. So IntelliTrace is built in, and it's done on two forms. We have built-in day-to-day debugging, but we also have IntelliTrace in production. I'm going to talk about both. But what I thought I'd do here at first is just kind of show you the, your day-to-day debugging, but with a twist. We're going to see how IntelliTrace is going to solve some interesting problems. So, Brian and Peter and I were talking before the session here, and, we got to talking about music that we like, and what I was surprised about is that Brian is a huge disco fan. He loves his disco. So, he actually started singing Ring My Bell to Peter and I before he started. So I figured in honor of Brian, let's go buy a couple of disco albums so that he can kind of see what's going on and make him happy. So there's our disco albums. Everything is pretty cool. We bought this. So far, the application is looking pretty good. But really, who needs disco, right? So let's remove those from. Oh, I'm clicking on remove from cart, and nothing is happening. I've got a bug in this application. Okay? I've got a serious problem here because I can't remove anything from this cart. So how would you go about this, right? Because, with modern web applications, we got a lot of stuff running on the client, we got stuff running on the server, we got stuff running in the database, we got stuff running in a web service, we got a REST call here, we got a mess, right? Well, what we're going to do is I see that there's a problem in my application, so I'm going to go in and break in. Okay, let's stop the application in the debugger, and what I'm going to do is, assembly language, I know that makes some of you excited. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over to one of the most important windows in the debugger, and that's the IntelliTrace events. And so what we're seeing here with these IntelliTrace events is the events that are recorded by default when you start running under the debugger. So you can see that by default it's recording different things about exceptions and so on and so forth. So when you start running IntelliTrace, you're going to find ways to patterns of usage of your application. So since I'm using the Cassini web server, which is, this little guy right here, the development server, I'm seeing some of the startup of the development server. Since this is a web app, where does it really start? Well, you kind of want to look for the start of a web app with a standard get of the home page. So that's where my application really starts. So that's pretty straightforward. We've got the view there, and I can see that, hey, that's where the get is. I can go look at the call stack to see where that got generated. So there's my call stack, and there's the web host, and system.web is pulling this up. And so we're seeing these events that give us a different view into debugging. So for example, the first thing I see after the get is that XML document loaded. Now, I don't know about you, but Wintellect, we do a lot of debugging, and that's my job at Wintellect is to debug other people's applications. I mean, how cool is that? And, there's a three-letter acronym that causes all of the pain in .NET development, and that three-letter acronym is XML. XML is death for performance. So I see right now that, hey, we've got an XML document load. That's potentially a bad thing because people misuse XML. XML has its purpose. XML is for importing and exporting data from things you do not control. Right? That's what its purpose is. And what we see a lot is that people make the mistake of going, oh, wait a minute, I need to build this interface and make it future-proof. So if you want to call my API, even though we're inside the same process, you need to pass me these XML strings so I am future-proofed. Right? Well, what's the problem with XML? It's big and fat, and it's a string at some point. So the problem is that XML strings turn into .NET strings, and what's interesting about strings in .NET? They're immutable. So that means that a string, if you've got this big 2 megabyte XML string and you want to add or subtract an element, what has to happen in .NET? They have to allocate a second gigantic string and do the manipulation there. Because strings are read-only, essentially. So this is a huge problem with a lot of performance in .NET applications. So just, we haven't even looked for the bug yet, but I can see that I've got an XML document load. So I'm going to want to look at the call stack for that and see where that's coming from. So I see that there's the top of the stack, and I'm seeing, oh, it's coming out of system.configuration, right? So that's reading the config file stuff. That's something that Microsoft is doing. So I trust Microsoft. They have performance engineers. Okay, that's not coming out of my code. Because this is just something that you learn over the years that if somebody's manipulating XML, that's a key area that you got to take a look at. So this being an ASP.NET application, and an MVC application in particular, some things start happening under the hood for you about missing method exceptions, because they do a lot of dynamic stuff in ASP.NET MVC. So, these are kind of common patterns. And we can see, the system dynamic object here, where it's looking for title, right? Because they're using the dynamic keyword and they're building up that property bag with dynamic stuff. So this makes perfect sense that we would see those kind of things. So that's no big deal. So let's keep rolling through here. So we see some title stuff there where it keeps finding it. We see some invalid file for monitoring. We can look more at that. What's the file? That's just the MVC stuff. We don't need to worry about that a whole lot. And then we can start seeing, oh, here's some good stuff. We'll start seeing the get of the CSS for the site. That's pretty cool. And, oh, look at this. There's my jQuery that it's accessing. But what happens right after that? So it turns around and we've got a problem here because it's throwing exceptions now that it could not find it. Now, I have the reference source code set up, so it's trying to access it. So we're seeing that, sure enough, we've got a problem where the jQuery script doesn't exist. So think about how you would find that problem in a normal application. that would be a lot of work and a lot of pain in the neck to go figure this out, because where's that error, right? Well, because we have this IntelliTrace turned on, I immediately get to see, there's my problem. So instead of you sitting around going, okay, let's go spend a half an hour looking for this, in the real world, you would have found this in about 30 seconds, because the log, the history of your application occurred here. So that's pretty neat. And you can see that, yep, there's the error page and everything else. But let's keep looking through this and see if anything else pops out that's kind of interesting. So we know that we probably have a problem with jQuery, and we'll come back to fix that. But, it's always good to look at the IntelliTrace view so you can kind of see what's going on with it. And so, you see that we're loading some logos and some PNGs and stuff like that. And then, oh, look at this one. Wow, it's accessing the favorite icon, okay? But what's wrong with this website? My favorite icon isn't there. So what happens? Okay, so the favorite icon isn't there. So they throw an exception, okay, because it's not found, doesn't exist. Okay, they throw it, they catch it, they throw it again, they catch it, and then what do? They generate an error page. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before, but let's go look at the locals, and we'll dig in here. And we'll look at this as HTML and think about what just happened, right? You don't have a favorite icon, so what happens here is that every time you get requests for it, ASP.NET MVC goes off and generates an error page. Now, you don't see this error anywhere, right? The web browser doesn't show it to you. You don't see it in the logs, but guess what's going to happen here? Let's go look through here, and you'll see, right, there's another one, okay? There's another one, right? And there's another one. So what are we looking at here? We're seeing that every time a favorite icon is accessed, we're getting two throws and catches, and we're getting an error page generated. So this is the fact that it's telling me this goes, oh, okay, let me go fix that by putting a fav icon in there. So this is one of those things where it probably wouldn't show up. Wouldn't show up in testing. But if you had a big, busy web server, what's going to happen is that you're going to have about maybe 2% overhead just processing the stupid stuff about the favorite icon. So I think this is a great example of kind of some of this extra information that you get from IntelliTrace, kind of just that flow of what was going on, where the exceptions were, and so on and so forth. Okay. Jay, this is a good question, Jay. How do you turn on IntelliTrace? It's on by default. So if you have Visual Studio Ultimate, it's there. So anytime that you're debugging, you just simply go to Debug, Windows, and just go get the IntelliTrace events, and that will show it to you. Now we're going to dig a lot more into this, but I'm showing you literally what all of you have on your machines right now. That this is free. So a lot of people don't even realize this, which I found kind of interesting. So that's you get all of this for free. You don't have to do anything else to it. You just start debugging. So it's built in for your day-to-day debugging, which is very, very cool. Okay. No, Ed, this is Visual Studio Ultimate. Okay, and this is the one thing that Ultimate has in it that is the big advantage for buying it. So this is a pure Ultimate only. Okay. And my opinion is Ultimate is worth it because of this. Yeah, Josh, what you're going to need to do is turn on, if you want to get all the PDBs loaded, you could always verify with Debug Windows modules here, and we can look at, are we getting the symbols for everything? And oops, I don't have my symbols. I don't have my symbol server set up. Let me show you how to set up the symbol server. I messed up here. I was playing around with some stuff last night. The easiest way to get your symbol server set up is go to code.wintellect.com. And what this will do is get you to Wintellect's open source projects, so code.wintellect.com, and go to the Wintellect's GitHub page, and go look for Wintellect PowerShell. And this is a PowerShell module I put together that will auto-update your symbol servers. And I've turned mine off. I was playing with something, and I'll turn it back on the next demo. But what you can do here is once you've loaded my PowerShell module, you just do a set symbol server -public, and that will set up Visual Studio 2010, 2012, and WinDebug to access the public symbol servers. So that's how you can get all of that turned on. Okay. Alexi, we're not going to talk about remote debugging, but I will tell you how to run IntelliTrace on a server so that you can collect the data without Visual Studios installed. Well, Alina, yeah, you can see some of these in other environments, but see, the problem is that you're debugging a server application. You're only going to see that error down on the client machine. Now, if you're debugging on the same machine, great, you can see that. But think about the scenario where you've got a bunch of load tests running, and you kind of want to get an idea of what's going on. Well, are you going to have Chrome or the F12 tools from IE running on all those machines so you can see that? Probably not. So this is a way that we can see everything that's going on with the server application as it's running. And I'm just touched the surface of this. I just wanted to show you that you can do a lot of debugging without ever going into the debugger here. We're going to see a lot of stuff that you will never see with any other tools here in a minute. Okay? So let's get... Ooh, there's Visual Studio. We went back to the... It was like, where did it go? So, very quickly there, we kind of saw, I didn't have to set breakpoints or anything, and I kind of saw where the errors were. So let's go see what the error is with that JavaScript by looking at Solution Explorer here, and I've got a potential problem with my scripts, so let's go look in the scripts directory. And do you see what the problem is? Well, if we go back and look at IntelliTrace, we are looking for jQuery 1.4.4, but what is loaded here? 1.5.1. Somebody forgot to update some includes. So let's go fix that up. So let's go do my search on 1.4.4. Okay, and let's go look at that. Oop. I want to look in not open documents, but the entire solution. Okay, and let's see where all of these errors are, and we will update. Find all. There we go. Okay. So there's where we've got the errors. Now I want to be smart about updating this, and this application is built with NuGet in mind, and it's got uses the NuGet packages. So if you're not familiar, nuget.org, and you can read more about NuGet. This is a great thing. Allows you to very easily integrate jQuery entity framework, MLA, everything else into your application, but more importantly, you can update it. So NuGet is one of those really cool things that helps us out a lot. NuGet and all of that is built right into Visual Studio, so I can go get to my package manager here, go to the package manager console, and there's PowerShell, which I love. And so we want to do an update here to make sure everything is good to go. So let's do an update package. Okay. First, I got to stop debugging. Okay. And I've got my package manager console here. Update package, we'll let this run. And what this is going to do, we'll see it run in the background, is it will auto-update here and start adding and removing the older stuff and add in the new stuff. And so this is the benefit of all the good NuGet, which a lot of you have used. And now we've got everything all updated. We've got 1.9.1 is good to go. So that's pretty cool when we've got everything done. So before I start this, I'm going to go over and fix my PowerShell, or run my script, and this automatically set up Visual Studio for me, so I've got my symbol server set up, so that now we would get symbols, which is what I like to have. So life is pretty cool. We are good to go now, and let's get our project open back up. Okay. And let's go run our application and see if we fixed it. So we'll just do our good old F5, and oops, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to update the, I'll just kill that. So Control-Shift-F. I forgot to update the files here. So 1.9.1, I think, is the new one. It helps when you actually update the code that when you find a bug. That's kind of amazing how that works, isn't it? To update the code. So, let's just take a look here. So 9.1. Okay. And let's give it a rebuild. F5 again. And we'll let it go. Yes, Roger, that's the beauty of NuGet, is that when you run NuGet against a project that has added packages, NuGet packages, when you update the project, it automatically updates all references. And NuGet, I think, is just absolutely fantastic, because if any of you have looked at integrating some open source or a third-party tool into your projects, you know what a pain it is, because if you go look at setting up, like, say, this jQuery scenario here, right? We've got to remove the old jQuery. We've got to copy this file in, add it back. You integrate a package like EMWA, right? So let's go back and look at NuGet. And one of my favorite packages of all is the EMWA error tracking package. And you can read more about EMWA right here. This is a fantastic package because it makes it super easy to start recording application-wide errors. So if you add EMWA, that updates, it requires references, it requires config settings, and a bunch of other stuff. But they have a NuGet package, so it automatically updates the references, automatically updates your config file, and more importantly, when you update EMWA, to go, you want to go to a new version of EMWA, they automatically update all of the stuff for you. So NuGet is a very, very cool thing, and it's something that you should consider even inside your teams. Like I was at Dell, the computer manufacturer, last year, and they were showing me their internal NuGet package server, because you can set your own package servers up all day long. So say somebody at Dell, one of the marketing people, said, hey, on Veterans Day, we want to offer computers that are 78% off to people that are veterans. And so the business analyst gets the requirement from marketing, and they say, okay, well, we have to have a way to validate that the person is a veteran. So if they're a U.S. veteran, send in their DD-214, send in a photocopy of their active duty military ID, and so, you get the specifications. But what's neat about Dell is that when you go and create this new DLL to handle that new requirement, they actually have a NuGet server where all of their common code is up there, so you can add, the CSS styles. You can add it'll auto-update the HTML. It'll auto-update references and everything else, so that you can start without having to mess with all of this stuff. But you're pretty much guaranteed that everybody's going to be using the same packages. So whenever you update the package, you can go update the project, and boom, now it auto-updates. So it's very, very cool stuff, and it's something that I don't see a lot of companies taking advantage of. And my question is, why? Because you always have those 5 or 6 common packages across a team that when you go create a new set of pages and a new part of your website, right? You should be looking at how to create that so that it can be shared, so that you don't have to redo a bunch of that stupid work. So if you build some special custom control, put that custom control in a NuGet package for your team. So it's a very, very cool thing. Okay. Yeah, well, Josh, I think there's we cover a lot of stuff in here, and there's a lot of people in the presentation with a lot of different experience ranges. So I want to make sure folks get an understanding of what all we're doing. So don't worry, we're going to get through everything with IntelliTrace. So great, we've got our applications running, and let's make sure that our pages are there. So there's our new page. We'll go look at Disco again for Brian and buy his 2 albums. So there we go, and if we did our job right, excellent, right? So we fixed that bug, okay? But let's go look and see if there's anything else that's going on in our application. So I can go to my IntelliTrace window here, and we always have to break in to look at it. And, right, let's go look and see, well, we still have the favorite icon, but let's look at how I like to look at the IntelliTrace window a lot. I like to, kind of start getting in here and, there we go. I'm remoting into my Windows 8 machine because live meeting doesn't run so hot on screen sharing with Windows 8. So Oops. Hold on a second. There we go. So one of the things I like to do is I like to keep an eye on my exceptions. And we've got different categories of errors that we can look at here with different things. We'll talk more about these categories a little bit later. But notice we can also look at individual threads. So we can say, what is this thread doing, so on and so forth. So what I like to do here is come up into this search area, and this is a full text search. And you kind of want to keep an eye on exceptions, right? So you can just type in your text. And let's look at just the exceptions that have been reported. So you can see that the favorite icon is a big one. Let's roll up to the top and see if we see any exceptions that look kind of interesting. So we see some stuff about globalization, security, registry accesses. Is that, might want to look at that. Ooh, this is not good, right? We've got a SQL exception, okay? And I don't know about you, but anytime SQL is unhappy, the whole company is unhappy because, we've worked on a lot of these problems where people have an application that's got a performance problem in it, and it turns out to be something in the database because the database is taking too long because another application was doing something stupid in the database. So I don't know about you, but SQL exceptions being thrown and caught, but we didn't see any errors out of the application. This kind of worries me, okay? So let's go look at the call stack for this and see if there's any of my code in there. So that's down in SQL CE, and we can kind of look and, yep, this is something that my code is causing. Okay, let's go view source code. And so there's something that my code is doing here in this link statement to build up that right there, and we've got the index. So something it's doing about accessing those albums is causing a bit of a problem. So we've got the exception, so let's go look at the locals, and let's see what's going on here. And this allows me to talk about what data is recorded, okay? And the data that's recorded by IntelliTrace is a little bit limited, and it's limited because of performance ramifications. So the data that gets recorded in IntelliTrace is primitives, basically, your value types. And they don't record objects because the tough problem when you're building a tool like IntelliTrace is what level of recording do you go to, and how do you make a good UI that makes it very obvious that somebody wants to look at everything that this class is referencing and things like that. That's what's hard about these tools. Gathering the data is easy. It's the UI that's a hard problem. And this is a great example that if I could see the message, I could see what the problem was. So that's one of the drawbacks with IntelliTrace is that because of performance reasons, they don't record all of the objects. So, but that's okay. It's recording the exception, so it told me some good stuff here. So what I'm going to do is now I want to turn, because IntelliTrace has given me a hint, I want to go turn to live debugging and go look at these exception settings. And I want to break when this exception is thrown. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's see if this exception is defined. So we'll do SQL Server CE and see if that is by clicking on the find. And nope, that's not there. So I need to add this exception. And so adding a general exceptions to the debugger is pretty easy to do. So we're going to do the common language runtime exceptions. And what we're going to do is .data.SQL Server CE.SQL Server, SQL Server CE, SQL CE exception, sorry, E. Okay. So IntelliTrace gave me the hint as to what I needed to look at. So I'm just adding this exception here. Let me make sure I spelled everything right. SQL Server CE, SQL CE exception. Great, there we go. And I'm going to tell it to stop when thrown, okay? So that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to restart debugging because that happened in the past. And let's see if we can find out what's going on because IntelliTrace gave me the big hint. So let's go run this. We'll fire up another page. And there's my SQL CE exception. And when you've got an exception and you told it to stop when thrown, there's this really neat thing in the debugger that you can go to the locals window, and they will put this special pseudo register in here called $exception. So I told it to stop when it was thrown. So this is where we have $exception. This is where you see the detailed exception information. And so we can dig in here, and there is the message. That's what was having the problem. So this is kind of a neat thing that allows me to see, what's going on. But IntelliTrace gave me the hint as to what to go.
It appears John's disappeared again, folks. Just give me a second.
Okay. Am I back?
Yes, you are, John.
Okay. Okay. I have no. I hear. Oh, did I get lost again?
No, you didn't. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah, I hear this like from live meeting, and it sounds like that's when I leave. So I'm not touching anything, I swear. So let's go back here. Here's our error message. The specified table does not exist. If you go look for this error message with Google, you get thousands of hits where everybody's asking, how do I fix this error? So it's kind of a problem. Yeah, it may be sunspots, Darren. I think it might be. Isn't the sun doing some activity here in April? So this error, turns out everybody wants to know how to fix it. But what this error is, it took me a while to go find what it was, is if you see this exception being thrown, it's an entity framework problem. So this application uses entity framework, and when I updated the packages, it gave me the new version of entity framework. Right? You can tell NuGet to update individual packages, but I just had to do everything. So I've got a new version of Entity Framework, and they kind of like you to have a migration table when you do that, and that's what is missing here. So let's go fix that. And I'm going to, again, go back to the Package Manager console, and what we're going to do is enable migrations, because this will turn this on for Entity Framework, right? Some of you have done this. Some of you, this is the first time you've seen this. So great, we've enabled migrations. Then the second thing I need to do is update database, and that's going to do the work to build the migration table. So if we did need to migrate data from one version of Entity Framework to the other, we could do that. So we just took advantage of NuGet again to fix that. Okay. Yeah, okay, no problem. That $exception object shows up in the locals window when you tell the debugger to stop when an exception is thrown. And so when you go into the exceptions dialog, which is where we were, anytime you tell the debugger to stop on a specific exception, or you can even say all exceptions, whenever, all CLR exceptions, okay, whenever you stop, when the exception is thrown, they will put in the locals window that pseudo variable $exception so you can see all of the information about the exception. And that's needed because, especially if you have inner exceptions and stuff like that, that's the only place where you can see that. So you kind of get this for free, and it's just part of the debugger, but you only see it when you're stopping on an exception. Okay? Yeah, this was because of code first. So this database was all built code first, and I just needed, and I moved to a new version of Entity Framework. So that's why we needed to update that database. Okay, so that's what was going on there. Okay, so it's just that, but that's a very common error, and it's kind of funny. If you go search for that exception term, you find a lot of people are trying to figure out how to fix it, and it's not very obvious from the Entity Framework documentation. So we'll go ahead and give it a rebuild here, and let's, I still have my exceptions set. Let's go back to our exceptions, and let's go find that SQL CE exception. Okay, let's make sure that's still checked. I've got it still set to stop when thrown. So when I press F5 here, we're going to run it into the debugger again, and if we don't stop in the debugger, that means I fixed the error. Right, so the point I wanted to get across here is just out of the box, I have the exact same the default settings all set. you get some pretty valuable information. You get a different vector for looking at your application because you're seeing some of the history. And so it's very, very valuable. But notice that we're not stopping. We've got our values fixed and so on and so forth. So the good news here is that we fixed these very simple bugs, but potentially would be harder to find with different types of applications. But what I want to turn to now is let's fix IntelliTrace. Because the defaults for IntelliTrace, while they're valuable and they show you things, they're not how you want to run IntelliTrace for your day-to-day debugging. Okay? So I want to show you how you want to configure IntelliTrace, because I've had many arguments with the Visual Studio team about this. They have been very concerned about the performance ramifications. And my view is, who cares about performance in your day-to-day debugging? Because the cost, it all comes down to the cost of fixing a bug, right? If you're in here, in your cost issue, so if we sit in here, and hopefully you have all seen this table before, where you have the cost, right, dollars, how much does it cost on the y-axis, and the point where you fix the bug. If you're fixing it during requirements, you're fixing it during coding, and you're fixing it when it goes to production. What is the cost of fixing that bug? The graph looks like this. Okay? And the cost of fixing a bug by the time it goes to production is huge. And one of the things that I found frustrating about the software business is that nobody really knows the cost of fixing a bug on your teams. And I used to work at a company called Numega, and you young guys have never heard of it, but back in the 90s, it was one of the hottest debugging companies around. And it was an engineering-run company, and we did something very unique when we were sitting around designing our products. We used to sit down and calculate the cost of the bugs, and we used to calculate how much it cost for the phone to ring in tech support. So we actually had actual hard numbers that we could go back, and we would make estimates. Okay, if we leave this bug in, how much do we think it's going to cost? And we would go through real-world scenarios going, okay, this is what we're willing to, for the engineering cost to fix this bug so that we don't have to deal with tech support costs, so that we don't have to go release a hotfix and things like that. And that was one of the few companies that I've ever worked at that had those numbers, because most people, their managers have no idea what their salaries are. They've got no control over that, so they say, fine, we'll just fix it in production. And it's actually costing the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, even for small teams, to fix stuff in production. So my view has always been the cost of a bug is essentially zero when you fix it during coding. So who cares how slow a debug build runs? So I had a lot of arguments with the team about this, and here's how I want you to set up IntelliTrace so you get the best information possible. Step number one, you go into the IntelliTrace general settings, and you must turn on events and call information, because this is going to allow us, are you ready, to play our code backwards. This is the most important thing that IntelliTrace offers, and it's something that is not on by default. Step number two, in the Advanced tab here, you're going to check Store IntelliTrace recordings in this directory. The default for IntelliTrace is that when you stop, they record the video of your application, all of those events, and then when your application ends, or you stop debugging, they actually delete the file. And to me, that's incredibly wrong, because when do you want to look at some of these recordings? You want to look at them after the fact. So here's the directory where you can store them. Now, the file sizes, let me go ahead and mention this. I've always left the default as a 250 megabyte. That's been the biggest I'll go, because this is a circular queue, so it just keeps it. That's the maximum file size. You can set it to whatever you want, but 250 has worked great for me for my day-to-day debugging. The third thing you want to set is in the IntelliTrace events. The default events that they have turned on are too limited. Now, it's great that they do have some of the ADO.NET stuff turned on and the ASP.NET stuff turned on. Your mission is to go in and turn all of these on, okay? We want to see all the information when we're doing our day-to-day debugging. And what we're configuring here is what's called a collection plan. And the collection plans get very important when we talk about IntelliTrace in production, where you can run and gather IntelliTrace videos without ever having the a Visual Studio installed on the machine. But what we're talking about here is our day-to-day debugging. So there's the good stuff. Also here, I'll just mention this, you can exclude and include modules, right? If you don't want to record anything out of specific modules and so on, you can do that. So, you know, we do have a lot of control over the data collected. But that's what you want to set this to. So now I've turned up IntelliTrace to 11. Right, there's your Spinal Tap reference of the day. This is how I run IntelliTrace permanently. This is why I always have to remember when I do this particular section to reset IntelliTrace because I've always got it turned up all the way. So we'll go ahead and run here, and we'll do the same operation we were doing before. And we'll go look at our Disco, adding our files to it that Brian wants. We'll add that to the cart, go add some more Disco here, get that in there. Right, and we'll remove from the cart and, you know, just do some work. So what we can do now, with everything turned up, what I want you to notice here is, I should have called this out a little bit ago, is the size of the scroll bar. The scroll bar you can see is much smaller than it was before, but when we go look at the top, we're starting to see a lot more information. So we're seeing more good stuff about what was going on. So what we're seeing here is the startup of the Cassini web server that we're working with. So it's showing you accessing the files and so on and so forth. So I want to go find where my application begins. So let's go search for that get. And that's where my application begins, pretty much right there. So that's the quick way to go find the get. And then what I'll do is I'll get rid of it and then press enter. And then I move the... I'm set on the get. So this is where the application really started up. My code started running. Some of the other stuff you see up here, you can find some of the undocumented registry keys and undocumented environment variables that .NET uses. So I'll leave that as an exercise to you. So we'll see some of the same stuff, and we'll see some of the file accesses. We get to see more about what queued user work items, and we get to see that they're firing up stuff into a thread pool. And, we're starting to see some DLL loads and stuff because my application is loading these DLLs. But let's just look through here a little bit. There's our dynamic object, again, with exceptions. We're missing the title, so that looks pretty normal. But let's keep looking through here, and great, you can see that we're accessing the CSS, and we get to see the file accesses right there. So we're seeing that hey, the first time it goes out and reads the jQuery, it has to do a file access, access and a close, and an access and a close. So now why does Windows do two file accesses when you first access a file? Well, it's the architecture of Windows. The first thing they do is that they look to see if the file exists. Then, if it exists, then they open it. So that's why you're always going to see two file accesses and two file closes when ASP.NET's gathering something. But let's go ahead and look through here, and let's look at some good stuff here, right? So we're gathering, looking for our logo there, looking for the PNG, and do you see anything that's kind of interesting there? So we access it. In fact, let's search for that logo, right? So because I've got that great search, I can go look for the logo. And what's the problem here? Okay. Anybody see what the problem is? Shouldn't this be cached? I don't think your PNG is changing every day, so on every request. So I found IntelliTrace to be incredibly helpful to look for potential cache items, because I'll go run and play with the app a little bit, and things like this fall right out. So I've used IntelliTrace to go figure out, are we caching correctly? And, and the key to performance tuning is to fix the simple stuff. Right? Because if you've got a performance problem, fix all the simple stuff, then you can make a big decision. Well, do we need to re-architect this, or did we fix enough of the small stuff that we're good to go? And I think this is a great view. The fact that we've got everything turned on, we can now start getting some ideas of what our application was doing. So this is why I like to have everything turned on. And at the end of the session here, I'm going to show you how you can add your own events to this, so stuff that's unique to your application. But let me show you the absolute best thing of all. And this is why you turn IntelliTrace all the way up so you can see what's going on. So I kind of want to know what's going on in this application. So since we've turned on call and events, I'm going to right-click on that view line right there. And what shows up, and when you stop in the debugger here, is search for this line or search for this method in IntelliTrace. So let's search for that line, and guess what I'm doing? I'm now playing my code backwards. So I just set the video, the DVR back to this line. And I'm kind of like, well, how did I get here? Well, let's go look to the previous call. And, well, wait a minute, let's go step into that call. Do you see what I'm doing here? I'm actually playing my code forwards and backwards. And the locals update and everything else. So this ability to kind of see, what's going on in my application is huge, because now I can get an idea of how different things occurred as I'm playing with my code. So I can look and see, well, if I go do this operation, what actually happens here? So I can go back and see exactly what executed. And the fact I can sit here because I've got the call information turned on, I can go forwards and backwards through my code. And to me, this is a fantastic way to debug, because it shows me exactly what executed, and it allows me to get that idea, okay, I expected this to execute. How come it didn't execute as part of this? So I can see that. So I can kind of use that as code coverage. But also I get to see who called what when. And the fact is, I can sit in here at any time and say, how many times did this get called? I can right-click here, search for this line in IntelliTrace, and I can see this line got called 11 times just over the little bit of the run that I did. And then I can move through each of those 11 times and then start taking a look and seeing what the different data was and what the different state was. So this is playing your video backwards and the video being your code. Yeah, it's more than the call stack, because this, Alexi, this is taking you down to the line, and when we turn on that call and events in the IntelliTrace here, okay, debug options. When you go and turn on the IntelliTrace call and events, this is now recording on each line what occurred. So they will actually do the recording at the line level. So it's better than a call stack. Right? It's great that you've got a call stack, but see, the thing is that we're going backwards through the code. So this is the big thing that I love about IntelliTrace, because I've gotten in the habit of trying to figure, how did I get here? Now I can literally walk the code backwards, and I've got this deep recursive data structure. I can walk the code backwards and kind of see how I got there. And that, to me, is why IntelliTrace is so important, because it allows us to see that flow of the code. So this is way, way more than a call stack, okay? And at first glance, I can see why you might have thought it was a call stack, but seeing our individual lines is the big thing, okay? Yeah, it is unbelievable. It's pretty wild, because this literally, when I first saw IntelliTrace, I was like, wow, this is the first new industry debugging tool we've had in many years in the Windows space. Other operating systems, Java might have done some other things, but in Windows, we've been stuck with setting a breakpoint on a source line. And all of a sudden, we now have this great tool that lets us see flow. And I hope you appreciate how important that is. And this is why I think everybody needs to be on Ultimate, because this is going to help. This is the stuff that's going to help you debug faster. I always look at this IntelliTrace window and the call and events view before I ever look at anything else in the debugger, because that gives me that idea of how I got here, and that's my first step of debugging now, because I debug so much faster than standard. So this is hugely helpful. Okay? So that's kind of your day-to-day debugging, right? And I hope I showed you ways that you can work with this. So let's stop debugging. And wait a minute, where did my IntelliTrace window go? I stopped debugging, and I lose my IntelliTrace log. Okay? To me, this is a bug. Okay? But remember, I told you to go into the options dialog here, and in IntelliTrace Advanced, turn on Store IntelliTrace Recordings to this directory. The reason for that is because now you know where those files are. And wouldn't it be nice to have an automated way to issue a command that would just open the last file? Well, that would sound like a really good use for a macro, but many of you have noticed that Visual Studio 2012, they removed the macros because the Microsoft SQUIM data, the usage data, is wrong. And so they said nobody uses macros, they're fragile, so we're going to remove them. But what's the first thing you all do as a developer? When you start Visual Studio for the first time, Visual Studio pops up down here and says, do you want to participate in the Customer Improvement Program? And you say no. So that's what they used to justify removing macros, because their SQUIM data was horrible. Okay? Yes, Mario, we're going to cover that in about 30 seconds. So I'll show you how to get the what's called IntelliTrace in production, so that you can get IntelliTrace data off of other machines, production servers, and so on. So we're going to cover exactly how to do that. So the first started out with the day-to-day debugging and whatnot. But let me show you one last trick with your day-to-day debugging here. We don't have macros anymore, but we do have the PowerShell window, and I love my PowerShell. And if you go to Wintellect's PowerShell site, or code.wintellect.com, our Codeplex site, or GitHub site, down here at the bottom, you'll see Wintellect VS Commandlets. And this is a bunch of commandlets I authored that make multi-threaded debugging and using things a whole lot easier in Visual Studio, because I didn't want to have to write a physics for a 4-line code. So I have the Wintellect VS Commandlets loaded as part of my PowerShell. And if I do a git help on Wintellect VS Commandlets, you're going to see a nice little commandlet I wrote that will do what? Open the last IntelliTrace recording for you. So after you stop debugging, this will automatically open the IntelliTrace file and that was just recorded from the last debugging session, and we can click on one of the exceptions and click Start Debugging, and that will load it up. So that's how we solve that last of the problems with day-to-day debugging. Okay? So this is very cool stuff. But let's answer Mario's question and everybody's big question. Let's go work with dealing with. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing there. I want to go grab IntelliTrace off a production machine. I want to go grab IntelliTrace off an IntelliTrace video off a test machine. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to I've got a script for this, and where did I get this script? It's literally from the, just go do a Bing search, Google search for IntelliTrace in production, and it'll tell you how to do this. So what we're going to do is run this as an administrator. And I scripted this out because you can tell I don't know how to type. And I'm going to walk you through this script, so I'm not just going to run it. So we're going to walk through it line by line so you can kind of see what has to happen. And it's pretty straightforward. So the first thing you need to do is we need to download the IntelliTrace in production components. And this is your magic link, 245688. Just write that down, because this is going to get you to the latest version of IntelliTrace in production. And one thing that why you always want to use this forward link thing is that way it will get you to the latest version of the tools. So this will give you the IntelliTrace in production. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, this just popped in my head, IntelliTrace works with .NET 2.0 and higher. So that was something I meant to mention in the beginning. Okay. How do I get the random colors in PowerShell? I have a PowerShell startup script with my profile that when I'm running under an admin mode, I set the background color. Feel free to email me, and I'll email you my PowerShell profile, which has all of this stuff in it. So that's how it all works. And this start demo here is from Jeffrey Snover. He's the architect of PowerShell, and it was a script he put out. So great. There's our link. That's going to get us down. And let me do a little bit of setup here so you can all take a break. And I'm just doing some setup to get things straightened out. And so what I'm doing here is I have previously downloaded the IntelliTrace collector, okay? And Hey, Rick, I work with Rick. There was a visual layout that they, there is the call stack view, but it's basically useless. They did change the UI, so I know what you're referring to. That UI is gone. So there was the hierarchy and things like that. That's all gone. But how do I say this without breaking an NDA? Pay attention to my blog, because there's some hierarchy stuff that's going to be coming out very shortly. So I'll put it that way. Okay. Oops. Yeah, there's that pulls in, but Rick is, I know what Rick is talking about. During the betas of Visual Studio 2010, they did have a different view for IntelliTrace, but that view went away. Okay, but it'll be coming back. Let's put it that way, very shortly. Okay, so what we're going to do here is this is the IntelliTrace collector.exe that you download. Now you just need to download this on your development machine, because you need to run this strictly to do one thing, which is to extract out the files. And literally this exe is just so the lawyers are happy, right? And this is what's always fun about Microsoft. You know, if you've ever read about Microsoft, they have this magic ratio of 1 developer to 1 tester. But what they really have, and this is the real magic ratio at Microsoft, is 1 developer to 1 tester to 1 lawyer. So this dialog here, we need the exe just so you can click that and say extract. And what this does is it extracts out that CAD file. So you're going to do these steps on your development machine. Then you're going to expand the CAD file. Remember, some of you that are old like me might remember CAD files from the old days. Now this is incredibly important. When you expand this CAD file, you have to do /F:*, because if you don't use that command line switch with expand, it expands everything into the same directory and the collection won't work. So mark a big note, expand /F:*. And this will expand the CAD, and you're good to go. So this directory here, this is all you need to copy up. So you copy this to a USB drive. You are now ready to walk up to any machine and start collecting IntelliTrace data. Okay? So this is what you need. So now we can walk up to our machine and do it. So we're at the machine. I'm going to create an output directory, right? Let's create the output directory. Now, there's something very important that we have to do here, and it's related to permissions. If we're going to do an IIS application or a service application, we need to make sure that service or IIS application has read and execute permissions to the directory that's got the IntelliTrace and production collection stuff in it. Okay, so this is very important. So we're going to use our friend iCackles, which is on every Windows machine, to set this at the command line. The other thing we have to set is permissions on the directory where we're going to store the .itrace file. So that we need to give the account that will be running the IntelliTrace stuff. In this case, I'm going to be doing IIS application. Those of you with WPF applications, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So I need to have that have full permissions so that we can write those files. So great, we're good to go. We've set permissions, just standard iCackle stuff. Now, if you're doing IIS, you're going to do it through PowerShell. If you're listening to my voice and you're not doing PowerShell, you're just wrong. Everybody listening has to learn PowerShell, because that's the future for all automation at Microsoft. So we're going to import the PowerShell module here for IntelliTrace. And what are the commands that we have? These are the commands that you need to know. Okay? Yeah, Julian, this script I'm demoing is literally out of the IntelliTrace help. Okay, so let's just go find it. So I literally took this script from this page right here. See, there's the expand F, there's the iCackles. all of that. So there's everything that you need right there. All I searched for was IntelliTrace in production, iCackles, the top hit, and Bing is exactly what you want. Okay, so there's nothing special about that. Okay, so yeah, it's great when Microsoft just hands you the script. Okay, so you're just I'm just following exactly what that did. I can add no value there. Oops, let's get back to the screen. Okay, so don't worry. The stuff I'm doing right now is just so I can show you some of the help for the system. So one of the things I want to talk about are these scripts when you're doing IIS applications, web services. IntelliTrace does not support attaching, and the reason it doesn't support attaching is that it has to JIT the IL. In fact, if you're really curious and you want to know how IntelliTrace works, if you do a Bing search for historical debugging, Robbins, my last name, okay, so you'll find a blog entry I wrote on how historical debugging was the code name for IntelliTrace. So if you search for historical debugging, Robbins, Wintellect, how work, that will get you to this blog entry of mine that shows you how historical debugging works under the hood. So you can refer to that later. But how it works, real quickly, is that they instrument the IL and they put it in their hooks. The problem with that is that doesn't really work so great in an attached scenario, because if they supported an attach, you have a problem where what they would do is they'd have to re-JIT everything, which would be a massive slowdown, or you would start missing data. So that's why they only support starting stuff. So an important commandlet to know about is this check IntelliTrace collection. So as you're doing a collection of the IIS application, you can do a checkpoint while you're doing the collection. So you can do things like on a test server, okay, let's run this automated test. It does a bunch of work. Now you can checkpoint it. That will save the .itrace file, but not shut down IntelliTrace. So you're still collecting data, but it's saving it to a new file. So this is kind of an important command to know about. Get IntelliTrace file info is kind of important, because if you've got a .itrace file, this will tell you when it was recorded, how many events were in it, and that kind of stuff. Oops, I skipped one there. The get IntelliTrace collection status just reminds you what is currently running in IIS. We have the start IntelliTrace and stop IntelliTrace. So these are important, and the main reason I want to point out with these is, especially with the start and stop, is the where's my start? Is the dash confirm, because with IIS it's going to have to restart the IIS. So this confirm is kind of important, because it's going to, if you specify dash confirm, it'll do it automatically. And I also want to point out that it's going to do, this is where you pass in the collection plan, which is the events to collect and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So there we go. There's the commandlets. I just wanted to mention them. Okay. Now, those of you that are working on client applications, you're not going to use the PowerShell commandlets. You're going to use IntelliTrace SC. This comes with the IntelliTrace in production stuff. And IntelliTrace SC, the command line options are pretty simple. You're going to start your Windows Form WPF application with IntelliTrace SC launch program name, and that will give you start collecting the IntelliTrace data. You can it's very straightforward here. That will get you hooked up, and then record IntelliTrace off your machine. One of the things I always get asked at this point is, can I distribute the IntelliTrace stuff with my application? Well, I am not a lawyer. You need to go read the license agreement that you agree to when you first extract the IntelliTrace in production stuff, but I'm willing to bet that you're not. However, what I've seen some clients do is to write scripts that automatically download this for their customers and run it, have their customers say yes, and that seems to be okay, but I am not a lawyer. So check with your legal team as to what you can do, but I seriously doubt you can distribute this directly with your application. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Larry. No, Larry is the PM, and so no, that's the official word. So thanks for the confirmation, Larry. Okay, let's keep the lawyers happy. So what's cool about this is that we have control over the collection plan. And I'm going to show you the collection plans here that come with the IntelliTrace in production. So these are pretty cool things, and so you can edit these, and we're going to talk about editing these more in a little bit. But there's one key thing I want to show you with the collection plans, because we're going to talk about adding custom events and so on here in a little bit. But I want to show you one key thing by using the Visual Studio 2012's new built-in diff tool. Because the collection plan is pretty straightforward and pretty easy to understand. However, there's one little trick here, and this is really what I want to show. This trace instrumentation field, this element here is what turns on the call information, right? So when we went into the options here and we turned on the calls and events, that is setting this trace instrumentation. So take a note on that, because if you're on a test server and you do want to get that wonderful ability to play forwards and backwards at your source lines, this is the element to turn on. And this is, so I really just wanted to point this out. But these collection plans are the team did a really great job on this. They're really easy to understand. And we're going to look more at adding custom events here in a little bit. But I just wanted to show you the two collection plans that come with the system, and I just wanted to show you kind of what they look like. Okay? So let's go back to our script. Okay? So great, we're good to go. We've got the collection plans. So let's go do some collection on an IIS application. So I specify the output, I specify the collection plan, and which application pool I want to do it on. So this is going to spin, and it's going to say, hey, I've got to restart the IIS app pool. Yes, we want to do that. We'll let that run. And we can verify, hey, what are we collecting right now? So I do get the collection status. There we go. We can see my default app pool is currently running. There's the collection plan. Great, right? So we can now go look at our app. So let's go look at this wonderful test application I've written, and it'll be generated under IntelliTrace. So we're gathering IntelliTrace data right now for this application. And you can see I'm a master of the ASP.NET MVC wizard, aren't I? I don't do UIs. I'm an internals guy. I think PowerShell is the greatest UI in the world. Why should anybody need more than that? But let's just go gather some data here, because I want to show you some very, very cool things that the tool gives us when we're collecting under IIS, and it's some really cool stuff. So you can see I clicked on the register button, and it took a little bit. But let me go quick through some of the other systems here, and just to look at some of the different, I'm just generating some data. So nothing too exciting. So there we go. We've been collecting data in this application. Let's go take a look at this data. Okay. So I'm going to stop the IntelliTrace. Okay. It's going to ask me if I want to confirm again. Yes, because we're going to recycle IIS. Pretty straightforward. Okay. And we're done. So we can look at the IntelliTrace file information, right, just to show you there that I got a whopping 1 minute and 2 seconds of testing done. So I'm ready to ship this thing now. So great, we're done. Let's go look at this file. So it's in the D output directory, and let's go just do good old Control O. We'll open this up, and you can see it's recorded at 11:23, right? Just to show you that I did this right. So there we go. And here's one of my favorite things when you're doing web applications here. This IntelliTrace file, where, there's all the exceptions that occurred, but here's my favorite, one of my favorite things of all. I love this web request. And I've done a lot of looking at these because it's so fascinating, because we get the total time taken for the web request. We can see, status and all of this stuff. So you can look for, if you've got a 500 error or something like that, you can see.
We lost you again, John.
let me unplug and plug back in.
Yep, there you are. Or are you? Right, okay, folks, it looks like John might have just actually disappeared off cyberspace. We seem to have lost him altogether that time round. I'm not entirely sure what's happened. And 8 minutes from the end as well. What's the chance of that? I can see he's logged in there with no audio, so it looks like his connection's crashed.
Yeah, his connection crashed.
Yes, the session is recorded. Jeff, you could be right there. All of the information he's providing to us, he's overloaded live meeting. Yep, I'll buy that one. I'll buy that one completely. Do you want to see if you can get him back, Brian, and I'll entertain those?
He's in again. He's coming in now.
Right.
There he is again. Welcome back, John.
Yes. Welcome back.
Oh, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yep.
Hello. Yep.
Hello?
Okay, he obviously can't hear us. Yeah, we can hear you, John. Or we could. You seem to have gone quiet again.
Sorry about. I'm back. Can you all hear me? Because it says that I'm all connected.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that, everyone. Modern technology, you gotta love it. Okay. You gotta love it. Anyway, so let's get back here. Because, and of course, everything would have to die just as I'm talking about one of my favorite things here. This web request stuff is worth its weight in gold, and I have found a lot of interesting issues just looking at
John,
this
sorry.
data. Yep.
Can I
Go
stop
ahead.
you there? We can't see anything. We can hear you, but we can't see anything.
Oh, okay. Let me. Okay, that's because I forgot to turn on my desktop.
Fantastic. There you are.
Excellent. Hey, you know, if John had a clue, he'd be dangerous. Sorry about all of that, guys. Technology is there, so you should be all shared now and stuff. So let's get back to Peter's question here, since I'm looking at the questions. Yeah, so I showed you an HTTP web application, and so if you want to do a standalone exe, the trick that you're going to do is this right here is this IntelliTrace SC. That is the tool that's going to use to set up and start standalone exes. Now, how do you do services? What you're going to need to do for services is you're going to need to do a web search here. Okay? And if you search for IntelliTrace with services, okay, come on there, and you'll get to Matthew Sapper's blog, and this shows you it's how to set up with the environment variables so that you can get IntelliTrace off of a service. And so using IntelliTrace with services, this is great. I've done this with a bunch of our clients. It works fantastic. So just follow his steps in here, and it will do the work for you. So it's an easy way to do it. Okay. Hey Jeff, how you doing? So I know all of you. Okay, so watch out. So you know we've got all our good stuff here. Got through the questions. Now let's flip over and get back to the cool thing here, and that is this web request, because we get to see all of the time that's being taken. And here's my favorite thing of all: I can look at this, select the web request, and go look at the request details. And what this will show me is just the IntelliTrace data for that individual web request. I think this is incredibly valuable because it really helps you on test servers and in production to see just what happened for that individual request. You don't need to load the whole file. Now you can sit here and identify, well, hey, that's the one that took the longest. Let's go look at its details. And we can see that, yep, it was probably the database startup that was killing us there. So I love being able to see individual requests when it's run under IIS like that. So it's very, very good. Okay. Yeah, this is way better. I mean, I have found so many interesting problems just by looking at the events on that web request. This is great, great stuff. And the fact that you get this essentially for free, and even on gigantic logs, it is lickety split fast. The file formats that they use here, I don't know how far it's supported. Maybe Larry can chime in here, but I do want to mention, if I get the web search right, it's I think this is getting there's so they do have an API that you can get at the .itrace files. And, if I just didn't have a job and I didn't have to sleep and I didn't have to eat, I could just work all the time, one of the things on my list is I would love to build a tool that would diff the .itrace files. Because you can't dump these out to text, and that would be one way to do it. But I also thought it would be very interesting to look at these files for potential correctness issues, right? Like auto-analyze for security exceptions and kind of see what the call stack was, look to see if people are calling things wrong. So I'll leave this here for you. So if you have ideas on how you can, boy, I wish I had a tool that would, you can probably build it with IntelliTrace, because it's very, very cool stuff. And the team's done a really good job on this extensibility and this data. And they're using some of that extensibility here to pull up these web requests here. So this is really cool stuff. But, see, we've got all the threads and everything else. So if I wanted to look at a particular thread, I could just come in here and select that thread and click Start Debugging, and that's going to load the file for me. And then it's going to look just like we were when we were debugging and when you open the file directly. But I love the web request feature. Okay? So that's kind of IntelliTrace in production. I think the team did a great job. It's brain dead simple. Just go steal the script that they put in the documentation, and you're pretty much done with it. Let's get to the question. Yeah, here, Larry Gudger, thank you very much, Larry. Larry Gugg at Microsoft.com, he's the PM for this, and Larry is always looking for great ideas. I've talked to Larry many times about this, and so for those of you on the call here or listening to the recording, if you've got further questions and comments about IntelliTrace and features that you'd like to see, Larry would love the feedback. He has been incredibly helpful to me with answering questions, and I've got ideas. And he listens to them.
Looks like we've just lost your audio again. I don't know if John can hear me when he disappears like that, but yeah, he's he's vanished once more.
So
there he is.
The thing is.
And again. Yeah, sorry about this, guys.
Yeah, terribly sorry. What's happening what's happening is that the little the mute microphone button is toggling on and off when I'm in my remote desktop.
And we've just lost him completely again. Oh, hang on, no. Right, John, we can see your screen. Right.
Your attempt to mute may not succeed,
yep,
right?
There you go.
Yeah,
so I think that was somebody else trying to mute you there by the looks of it.
Maybe people are sick of hearing me. So this is live meeting that's muting me here. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but what's happening is that the mute is turning on. and it's killing me. So I apologize for all the hassles here. So
all right, I wonder why that's happening.
Yeah, it hates me. Okay. So anyway, so there's the big idea with IntelliTrace. We still got some more stuff to go here. Okay, so there's Larry's email. We still got some stuff to go. The video recording, James, will be available on the LIDNUG site.
We'll have it up on our YouTube channel after the show, James. What we normally do is these sessions are being recorded. We record all of them. This one's still being recorded now. And then we turn them into an MP4 and we upload them to our YouTube page. And you can find all of our presentations up there. And are we back, John? Hello? Okay, I think we've lost him again.
Okay.
There
Am
you
I
are.
back?
I can hear you again. Yep, you are.
Sorry about this, Eric.
Okay. And now we've lost him again completely. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Am I back?
We lost. Yeah, we lost your desktop again there as well. I think we need to just wrap this up. Nope, you're gone again. Oh, there we go. You're back again. Re-enable your audio. There you go.
Am I back?
Yep.
There, it's
yes,
me that I'm back. Live meeting, you got to love it. It's just deciding to mute me left and right. Very quickly, I do want to cover one last thing here, and how I'm going to do this is
by getting muted again. Yeah, it appears that the demo gremlins are not loving us at the moment, folks. After another hour. Yep, you're back. Your video's there.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys.
And you're gone again.
Yeah, okay. So
there you go. You're back again. Yeah, I think the demo gremlins are really hating us at the moment. Yes, Ed, he is a master of suspense. It's all part of his ploy to keep you all guessing and keep you all hooked and watching. Craig, yes, we do record the session. As I mentioned before, we record all of our sessions.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm back now. I should be back now.
No display.
No display.
You are, but no display.
Right. So I'm gonna try to share the desktop again. And I was wondering if there was a conflict between, live meeting or something that was going on. So I'm not going to go full screen on the desktop here. But what we'll do here is I want to leave everyone with a discussion of this collection plans here, because you can do your own custom collection plans. And so I want to get to a blog entry here that describes how to add your own events to the system. And this is a great blog entry, and I can't do any better than he has done here. And it's Guillaume Rochon's excellent blog, and it's for Visual Studio 2010, but it all applies to 2012. And it is this wonderful blog entry of how to add your own custom events to the system. And so just search for VS 2010 Custom IntelliTrace Events. The real value of IntelliTrace is when you add your own events, and your own events are based off your APIs and your methods. And so this shows you and walks you through how to add custom stuff to the system. And that way the IntelliTrace information becomes much more valuable to you, because you've got the IntelliTrace information related to your calls and methods. And this is a great example of how to do it. He walks you all the way through it, and he shows you how to hook it up. And so this is the ultimate way to go with IntelliTrace. And I've got some customers of mine where we've built custom IntelliTrace plans, and it's worked fantastically because we're now getting information up into our application, not just what my application is doing with the framework class library. And you'll see that this is the team's done a very good job with this API. It is very, very, very easy to add these. And this blog entry shows you how to add all of them. So we'll end it there. I apologize for all of the problems with the voice and the video because it's just the demo gremlins. But if you guys have any questions whatsoever between now and the end of time, please do not hesitate to email me. And let me get my email address up, my Twitter stuff up here. You can always email me, john@wintellect.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter because I'm scintillating in 140 characters, @JohnWintellect, and that's where I talk a lot about different issues with debugging and interesting things in development. So, again, I apologize for the audio-video problems. Who knows why they're there? Maybe we should debug it. But if anyone has any questions, the question manager is up. We'll take a look at these kind of questions. Okay? And Pavel had a good question here. Basically, what I do, this is a great question that Pavel's asking, random exception issues with a web app. Basically what I do is I just go, I turn everything up if I can afford to do that. Sometimes if it's in production, turning everything on can get a little, have some performance issues. But the best way I've approached this is to just get the IntelliTrace log because it's going to record the exceptions for you. So that way, where you have these crashes and whatnot, you're going to have everything leading up to it. So I find it a great tool for these random exception issues. And what I've done on some of our test servers, and we've even done this in production at some customers, is that we'll do network load balancing. And what we'll do with it is that we'll only do like maybe 60% of the traffic to one server, and that server we're just running IntelliTrace all the time on, just to kind of see what's happening. Okay, so great, great, Josh. Please let us know and let Larry know. Larry Gudger know is Larry Gug at Microsoft.com. Because both Larry and I would love to know about how you're using IntelliTrace and how you're working with it, because it is a really great technology, and I am literally debugging 10 to 20% faster, so that makes me a lot of money, allows me to go home on time. So I hope I was able to share that excitement. Cool. Any other questions? Okay. We'll keep Larry's email address up there now that Larry's going to get 1,000 emails.
Well, all I can say is thanks very much for another presentation, John. Always a pleasure to have you lot from Wintellect on with us here at LIDNUG, and it's always top-notch technical content that we get from you guys. I'm sure we don't have to ask you to come back again in the future.
Oh.
Time and time again. And yeah, great stuff. I've learned a thing or two as well. I could actually have done with IntelliTrace a few weeks ago on a project that I was working for on one of my clients, and he kept coming back and telling me that things were wrong with it, but whenever I went to look at the app or whenever I asked him to demonstrate what was going wrong, he wasn't able to.
Right.
And I'm just sitting here watching the demo that you just presented to us all, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If I'd been using IntelliTrace on that, I could have actually gone in, I could have remoted into his machine, I could have said, just let me run these scripts, boom, 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 and I would have sorted it out straight away.
Exactly. And this is where, so I'm saving 10 to 20% of time in my day-to-day debugging. Imagine the kind of time savings you're going to get in production systems with this.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Huge. It's
absolutely.
Huge.
There's
Absolutely
no
huge.
two ways about it.
Yeah.
Yep. But,
yep. Yeah, Josh, I'll be happy to help justify that email. Larry and I will just be glad. I really believe Visual Studio Ultimate is what everybody has to have, and IntelliTrace is the most important thing in Visual Studio. And the fact that you can run this in production is just icing on the cake. So everybody listening should be pushing for this now, because you're going to debug faster, right? And that's the last area of development. We've got planning down. Planning is much better. I've seen great strides in planning in the last 20 years I've been in this business, but we've had almost no strides in debugging. This is the last big area.
Yeah, okay? I completely back you up on that 100% as well, John.
Yeah.
I mean, I run my own independent ISV and doing services similar to you guys, and this is something that I tell the people that I work with all the time when I'm working with other developers. Visual Studio Ultimate or higher. Yeah, you shouldn't be using anything less. And I'll even give you another reason why you should be using Ultimate as well. If you look back through our LIDNUG archives, you'll find that about 2 years ago, I too did a presentation for us here on LIDNUG, sitting in the same place where you're sitting now, John. And my presentation tackled the subject of organising your project. And at the time, I was seeing a lot of people making very, very big strides in using SVN and getting all that to source control, but nobody was paying attention to actually how tidy the projects and everything were. You know, I was looking at some projects and they were an absolute mess. You didn't know which were classes and models and goodness knows what else. Yeah, and using the architecture tools and a few other things in Windows 7, which are only available in the Ultimate Edition of Visual Studio, I was able to demonstrate using these tools for a purpose that they were never intended for, you know, and use them to manage your project. You only get them in Ultimate. Ultimate offers you so much. The architecture tools, and loads of other stuff, you know.
Exactly.
Your manager shouldn't even be arguing with you if it's going to make you more productive. End of story.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing about, because some of you are asking how to get your manager to get this. I was on a plane, and I was sitting next to a lady that was the Chief Human Resources Officer for a Fortune 10 company. And it was a fantastic discussion. I normally don't talk to people on planes, but I was glad to talk to this lady. And I asked a question. I said, look, one of the problems I always see in this business is that folks don't, in developers, the management won't spend $400 on a tool that will save them, tens of thousands of dollars. How can you justify that? And her response was, oh, that's very easy. Your cost to a company is 3 times your salary. That's the number you need to use to justify money savings, because it costs money to have you sitting there in the office, the support, your health benefits. So the cost of you wasting time looking for a bug.
Oh, it looks like we've lost your audio again, mate. Right, well, for all those of you who are still sitting listening, I'm actually going to stop the recording now and officially mark the end.